We're going to talk about each team's offensive offseason moves. Well, we're going to skip a few teams that haven't done a lot and a few teams that kind of graded out in the middle. So just to introduce my co-panelists today, we got Justin Mason on the center of your screen. You know him as the head of TGFBI, part of the Sleeper and the Bus podcast. Great team over there. Friends with Fantasy Benefits. He's got his own line of merch. Like, that's pretty rare in our space. So he's everywhere, right? And I think I left like 10 places out, didn't I, Justin?
Yeah, I'm also at Fantasy Pros and Fangraphs, and yeah, I'm sure there'll be 3 or 4 more added before the season starts. So
we'll get some breaking news in before the end of the hour. And then we've also got Brent Hershey, co-GM over at Baseball HQ. If you don't read the Baseball Forecaster and you play fantasy baseball, I'm guessing you don't do that well. How's it going, Brent?
It's going well. Thanks, DVR. Good to be here with you guys.
So we went through the process of grading all 30 teams and then compiling those grades into a GPA sort of number. And our advanced technique landed on the Dodgers as the team that have had the best offseason so far. I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to make Justin say nice things about the Dodgers.
yeah.
Justin, the floor is yours. Why have the Dodgers had the best offseason, perhaps by far, of any team in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I don't think it's even particularly close. Like, I gave one other team an A, but I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have just made a larger gap between the Dodgers and everybody else. Listen, I know everybody is angry about the Dodgers going out and getting all these players after winning World Series and continuing to defer money, but don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, this is the way baseball is set up. There is no salary cap, and really, this is jealousy. And I'm a Giants fan. Everybody knows that I'm an unabashed Giants fan. I hate the Dodgers with a passion. But, like, they're doing exactly what I want my team to do, which is develop a lot of talent and then build around it by paying for players and trading for players. And, they've just had an amazing offseason where they continue to just add. They added arguably the best pitcher in the free agency. They went and got Roki Sasaki. They got a bunch of depth in the bullpen in Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates. They added Michael Conforto. Like, it's just unreal how much talent they've added to an already just flush with talent team. And it would be shocking to me if they aren't the best team in baseball once again.
Yeah, they should enter the season with the highest projected win total, highest projected WAR. It's leveraging the resources they have, right? And we could have an entirely different panel about the disparities between teams like the Dodgers and the smaller market teams. The fact of the matter is they're playing the hand the way you should play the hand. I think I completely agree with that. But how do you not love an offseason where you add Blake Snell, you add Roki Sasaki, you bring back Teoscar Hernandez, you add Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, like you said, you go out and get Hae-Sung Kim from the KBO. And with the trade of Gavin Lux, I think we've learned kind of quickly that the Dodgers have every intention of playing Kim a lot. Like, they might value him more than other clubs did. And I forgot that they actually saw Kim when they were in Korea before their season started last year too. Brent, I know you have a strong scouting background. I'm just curious what you think of Kim and how you think his skills are going to translate, because I think he almost gets lost in the shuffle with the Dodgers additions.
Yeah, I think you're right. The fact that they went and signed him just shows given their organizational background, just shows what they believe in him for that. I think if we're thinking fantasy wise, it may not be a huge impact guy, at least at first here, but as we've said, with all the other. With their base of where they started, that just the continuing to add talent like that, I think it's a really good fit for the Dodgers with Kim.
Yeah, we were across the board A's or A pluses on the Dodgers offseason, and as Justin said, A's were hard to come by. We were a tough group of graders looking through all the report cards.
It's hard for other organizations to get A's when the Dodgers have signed everybody.
Right. Yes. The impact you were looking for landed on the Dodgers. That's what created this bubble. But I do think there's a bit of an argument we could have about the Mets and, whether they have effectively leaned into their depth enough by comparison. So let's go over there next. And you add Juan Soto in free agency. That should be almost an A right there. So I get the sense that maybe we're not completely in love with some of the other things they've done around that, even though they are spending, they are trying to make the roster better. I'm curious how you landed on a less than A grade for the Mets, Brent.
I think it's just the Alonso question for me is a big part of it. Just the kind of unknown still. I mean, the official thing is that they're out of that and looking other places. But it's Cohen, and I think lots of things can be reversed that way. But I mean that the hole that leaves in that corner infield, is kind of real there. I think the team, I like the sort of, from a defensive standpoint, the move to get Jose Siri, to just put him out there catching balls. But then, with Alonso not there, I think the bottom third of that lineup is really, McNeil, Siri, Beatty right now is a deficiency. So it is a little bit odd in kind of adding, whatever, a top 5, top 10 player like Soto like that, and not, totally kind of win the off season. But the other moves around it, and I just came back to, like that hole with Alonso, especially, I think is, still kind of to be determined about that.
I remain skeptical that he's not going to go back there. I know some of the reports, I mean, the Jesse Winker signing in particular was like, okay, we're moving on from Pete. It's like, I don't think that's how it works when you have a budget like that. I think it's just the negotiations are still going on between Boris and Steve Cohen. And unless some other team actually swoops in with some big bags of money, I think there's still a very good chance he ends up back there, because they can still make the pieces fit. You mentioned Brett Beatty at third base. It sort of seems like the ship has sailed for him in that organization. Justin, one thing I wanted to ask you about with the Mets, and you gave them an A, so you might like the depth signings or some of their moves they made. They brought back Manaea, who was fantastic, especially in the second half last year. They're going to try Clay Holmes as a starter. They added Frankie Montas, who the stuff and analytics forward teams all seem to like, even when the results aren't there. AJ Minter quietly added the bullpen, Ryan Stanek. So it's volume, right? It's depth. It's depth on the pitching staff in particular behind the big acquisition. But were there any moves in particular that you thought were going to create a lot of value from a fantasy perspective, or proved to be really sharp moves for David Stearns and company?
I think for me, it was the depth that they brought into that starting rotation and then into the bullpen as well. I really like that they brought back Manaea. I think he really felt comfortable there, whereas when he was in San Francisco, he did not feel comfortable, kind of not having a set role. And he just pitched really, really well. I thought it was a really, really smart signing to bring him back. I don't know how the Clay Holmes experiment is going to work, but I give him a lot of credit for trying. And I think it's an affordable deal for them, even if they end up having to move him back into the bullpen. Really like the Montas signing. I know Montas was not good in Cincinnati, but how many pitchers are good in Cincinnati? And now you get to go to Citi Field, which is a much better park to pitch in. My favorite pitching signing is probably AJ Minter. I think that bullpen really, really needed a left-handed pitcher who could kind of shut people down late in games, and I think they did that with Minter. So I think it really strengthens that bullpen. For me, getting Juan Soto, I understand they spent $700 million or whatever it was to rope him in, but he is 26 years old. You now have him as a Mets player pretty much for the duration of his career. And I just thought that was such a great building piece around them. Yes, I would love them to go get or bring back Alonso, or even go sign Bregman, guy like that to kind of really just strengthen that corner infield. But I think even with where they're at now, this is a huge win, kind of deepening that bullpen, deepening that rotation, and then getting Soto as kind of the real centerpiece of that offseason. So I love what the Mets did this offseason.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, because of the Soto signing, they are going to grade the Mets a little more favorably than the team that came in second and tied for second with them in our composite grades. That's the Red Sox. And we actually had a pretty wide spread in terms of what we thought of the Red Sox offseason so far. I'm actually going to go to you first, Justin, because you came in a little lower. Garrett Crochet, of course, being the headlining addition, really the biggest thing that they did this offseason. Why are you a little bit underwhelmed by what the Red Sox have done?
I just feel like they could have done one offensive move to kind of if they had signed Bregman, I know there was talk about that at one point. I feel like that this would be an A off season for them. I mean, I obviously I love Garrett Crochet, and I don't think that is a secret that everybody in the fantasy community loves Garrett Crochet and thinks he's an elite pitcher and going to do great in Boston. And we're thankful from a win standpoint that he's no longer in Chicago. And I actually really like the Walker Buehler signing. I know some people didn't like it, but to me, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. And I think he, showed some stuff, enough stuff that, hey, that contract is going to be perfect for them. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. They don't have him long term. But I just wanted one more piece of that offense, just one piece, especially like at third base, so they can move Devers off of that position defensively and really kind of strengthen the roster. So I think I gave it a B minus. Maybe I should have been a little bit higher, maybe, B plus ish or a B. But I feel like this is an organization that has a ton of money. They can go out and spend. They have no excuse. I mean, not that any organization has an excuse to not go out and spend, but the Red Sox are one of the premier organizations. They should have gone out and gotten a big bat to add to this lineup.
Yeah, I think the challenge, though, is just the way the roster's built right now. They'd lose leverage if they added Bregman because it would force them to make some kind of move, trading Tristan Cassis, something along those lines. And maybe the offers just aren't lining up. Brent, you were much more generous, of course. You were on the A side. Is it just love for Garrett Crochet? Do you like some things about the other signings and moves they made too? I mean, they added a little bit to the bullpen. Aroldis Chapman, Justin Wilson. Justin mentioned the Buehler signing. Patrick Sandoval coming off a Tommy John 2-year deal. That's more for the future. So was it just the impact of Crochet, or was it the depth that you also liked?
It was the impact of Crochet for sure, to start off with, because I felt I think it was kind of obvious the one thing they really could use is a true kind of top of the rotation guy, and they get that with Crochet. But I think it's the where I would put out I think it's the trust in their own kind of farm system here, and it's kind of the exchange rate too, right? Like they got Crochet for 3 minor leaguers that are not coming off the major league roster. So that's a huge win, and they still have the best prospect in baseball, Roman Anthony, and another top 10 guy in Christian Campbell. So I think my counterpoint to kind of Justin's question about that they need one more bat, I think they may have that. Not all the young players obviously are going to hit, all that kind of thing. The guys are developing at different rates and all that. But I think that they may have added this top of rotation pitcher, and also are able to use some of this farm system. These guys are just about ready, whether they start right at the beginning of the year, depending on how spring training goes, or if it's more of a mid-season promotion for one or both of those guys. I think that might be the bats they needed. So on that whole, that's why I kind of gave them an A in that case.
Just to chip in 2 cents from my side, I was a little closer to Brent's grade on the Red Sox. I had an A minus on them. I think it's picking a little bit of a nit because I'm not as excited about Walker Buehler as Justin is. Like a 1-year deal. He's right. It's not going to wreck them. It's not going to cause any long-term problems. But I think about the loss of Nick Pivetta and replacing him with Buehler, and I have more confidence in the innings and the quality of those innings from Nick Pivetta at this stage of their respective careers, given some of the skills growth that we saw. So even though they got the big upgrade with Crochet, I think using Buehler as that secondary guy instead of just bringing Pivetta back, that might be the little thing that I'm looking at that I'm not as on board with as some other folks out there might be. But a good offseason for sure for the Red Sox so far. A team that we probably didn't expect to be talking about if we'd known that we were going to do this panel, 6 weeks ago, the Diamondbacks, like the Arizona Diamondbacks, 4th best offseason by our grades, coming in just over a solid B grade. So kind of like a B plus, I think, combined across the board. Corbin Burns to Arizona was probably one of the bigger surprises we've seen for a free agent in the last couple of years, Brent. So how much of this is just Corbin Burns going to an unexpected place where they really do need a frontline type guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in my thinking anyway, it's very similar to the Crochet thing where the team, adds a top of the rotation guy at no cost really to the major league roster. In this case, obviously, just the cost is the huge out of their pocketbook. But it's and it gives them now kind of starting depth to sort of deal from if they need to. There's constant rumors about Montgomery. There's other guys on there that they could easily move off and still have a really strong starting five. And while I don't think that Naylor coming in, while I prefer Christian Walker to Naylor in a vacuum, especially given the all around game, the defense that that Walker gives you. I just, I feel that the Burns signing and kind of adding him there gives them. I gave him personally a B plus in there. So.
Yeah, and Justin gave him the same grade. I mean, I think Naylor for Walker, without having to make a multi-year commitment to a guy on the wrong side of 30 in Walker, it's a pretty decent sort of replacement. I get the sense they're probably not going to miss Slade Ciccone all that much.
Right.
No, I mean this was perfect offseason, and another more proof that any organization can, go out and spend a ton of money, even after an offseason in which they spent a bunch of money. Right? They went out last offseason. They got Erod, they got Montgomery. Didn't really work out great for either of those guys or the organization, but they didn't use that as an excuse to be like, hey, we can't afford to go out and get a Corbin Burns right now. They went out and did it. They went out and traded for Josh Naylor. I just really love what they did. They added to this young offense that is improving. They added to that rotation to make it really, really deep, which is what you need to do if you want to compete for a playoff spot, especially in a really tough division, is you need depth in that starting rotation. You never know when a guy's going to go down. For them to have 6-7 starters that they can roll with is great for Arizona. So I love what Arizona did this offseason.
It is one of those things. I was surprised they led the league in runs scored last year as a team. They may miss Jock Peterson a little bit, but having the flexibility to rotate guys to that DH spot a little bit more, or maybe that ends up being Naylor's spot if they like what they're getting from Pavin Smith. They just have a little more defensive flexibility on the roster, not having Jock, even though he's a very impactful big side platoon DH. And I wasn't trying to imply that Slade Ciccone is bad as much as they just have enough depth where they're not going to miss him. I think the Guardians could actually find a pretty interesting number 4 starter there. So that could be a trade that actually works out for both sides. So I just wanted to clarify that wasn't a shot at Slade and just run away. Let's talk about the Cubs for a minute. We all gave them Bs, and I think we're all friends with Sarah Sanchez. And if Sarah were here, I don't think Sarah would give them a B. I get the sense that a lot of Cubs fans feel like that they're not happy that this front office has been reluctant to go all in to get top end free agents. They have shopped really effectively, I think, in the second tier, going as big as Dansby Swanson, adding Jameson Taillon a couple off seasons ago, say a Suzuki. And they have a lot of young talent coming through. So there's been a little bit of the, hey, we got guys coming. Let's be patient. And I can understand that can be really frustrating. But they added Kyle Tucker. That's a pretty big deal, right? And if adding Juan Soto wasn't an automatic A for all of us for the Mets, I get it. But Kyle Tucker is a really nice player to have. You just don't have him forever. You've got him for a walk year. So I think that's probably why I was holding back a little bit. But what do you think overall of the Cubs' direction? They just added Ryan Presley in that trade with the Astros. Do you think the Cubs are actually going to be the favorites in the NL Central after the moves that they have made over the course of this winter, Justin?
So I did a series on TikTok because someone asked me, what are teams that could surprise and make the playoffs or exceed expectations to make the playoffs in 2025? And so I just went through all like the non-playoff teams that I thought could make a jump if things go their way, right? Obviously, you need some luck in a long season like in baseball. I covered the entire NL Central. I think every team in the NL Central could make a leap and make the playoffs if things go their way, because no team in the NL Central wants to do what it takes to just win the division outright. And I think that includes the Cubs. I like what they did. Obviously, you love Kyle Tucker. I like the Matthew Boyd signing as kind of a bridge arm. But I even like the Ryan Presley trade to strengthen that bullpen. But like, this is again one of these organizations like Boston that has a ton of money. They have no excuse not to go out and spend the money to go improve this team. And I don't feel like they've done enough to separate themselves. So I think they should be considered one of the favorites to win this division. Are they the favorite? I don't know. I think there is like a 3-horse race right now between the Brewers, the Cubs, and the Reds. And I don't think the Pirates and the Cardinals are far behind that either. And I wouldn't be surprised if any team won this division, honestly.
Yeah, it might be the most open of the divisions right now based on the various strengths and weaknesses of these clubs. Where would you have made one more addition, Brent, when you look at the Cubs? What's the one opportunity, maybe there's one player the Dodgers got that the Cubs should have added to get that extra nudge?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's on the bat side, really. I mean, with Bellinger and Paredes both moving out. I think that and kind of the unsureness about the Horner injury there. I mean, there's lots of love for Matt Shaw, and he certainly has shown a lot in the minors and recently, and I think could be a really good player. But it's still, it's an unproven guy at the major league level that we haven't seen at all from yet. So I think one more kind of infielder like that to fill that hole would be something that I would have wanted to kind of put them up to the next level. I mean, I just kind of look at their bench, and it's pretty thin as it is. As much as I love the star power of getting a Tucker like that, and really like the Presley move too, and just solidifying, adding on to that bullpen.
Yeah, I think Tanner Scott feels like the one that got away, where it's like the Dodgers find relievers in every possible corner, and the Cubs maybe have changed some things about pitching development where they've got a few more interesting back end guys than we expected from a year ago. But Tanner Scott and Ryan Presley in that bullpen, I think, would have made another pretty big leap forward for them in that particular area of need. We got one other team that got a consistent like B average grade or better. So we'll put the Yankees into the conversation. It's kind of funny to see them get the same grade as the Mets because the Yankees lost Juan Soto in free agency and had to pivot to plan B, which I don't think that's easy as a front office. There was no actual backup. Kyle Tucker was the closest thing to it. They didn't trade for Kyle Tucker. They did add Cody Bellinger in a trade. They went out and signed Max Fried. And you start looking at the collection of pieces. Paul Goldschmidt comes in to replace Anthony Rizzo at first base. Is this actually a good enough pivot? Devin Williams in the closer role now after the trade with the Brewers, giving up Nestor Cortez. Is this going to be good enough for the Yankees to be at least as good as they were last year, even if their strengths have changed a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I gave him a B plus grade, and because I think even with that loss of Soto, which is obviously, I mean, as soon as you lose that, you've got a lot to make up for giving an off-season grade. But like the fact of getting positionally, kind of getting Bellinger to play center, so you can move Judge out of there, I think, better in a corner, to get. One of the best closers on the market to, just to be for sure about that. Luke Williams was great, and was an awesome story. Was great throughout the playoffs, but doesn't have the track record basically of someone like Williams. So I think those two, especially, and getting Goldschmidt, even if he does continue his kind of downturn, I think there's some rebound possibilities there. But even if he does continue his downturn, I think he's going to give you more at first base, and obviously you got out of Rizzo and some of those other spots. So I like that overall, and I think team possibly isn't quite as good as last year as we sit here now, but I don't think it's a big downgrade, even being that they lost like superstar like Soto.
Justin's a little lighter on what the Yankees have done than we are. You dropped a B- on them. So where did they fall short?
I think they fell short at third base, where they're projected right now to have a platoon of Oswaldo Cabrera and DJ LeMahieu. I think that's the number one spot. Like, where it is clear they need somebody there to man the hot corner, especially if they are going to move Jazz Chisholm off of that and back over to second base now that Gleyber Torres is gone. I would have liked to see them address that spot. I also am a little worried about Max Fried. He's had kind of off and on forearm, elbow issues that haven't resulted in anything serious yet. But I just worry about, like, hey, are you guys the one going to be holding the bag if and when that elbow does blow up? And adding that to a rotation of guys who have a plethora of injuries, is that really the best allocation of funds when you've got Garrett Cole, who's got his own, risk? You've got Carlos Rodon, who is always risky. You've got, Mark Stroman is going to be 34. Like, there's a lot of risk in that rotation. I really like the rotation if it stays healthy, but I just don't know how much I trust it to stay healthy. So those two things kind of dropped it down for me. I would have liked to see them maybe add another arm or a different arm. If you're going to spend that money on Max Fried, why not just pony up the money to go get Corbin Burns, personally, for me. But overall, I think it is a pretty good off season, especially considering they lost again Soto, which was just a devastating loss for them.
Do they move up into A- territory if they add Alex Bregman? Because the fit there seems really solid. I mean, Bregman's defense should grade up fine for the next several years. The park probably keeps his power afloat a little bit longer. And I think there's a handful of places where he makes a lot of sense, but I'd be like looking at the Yankees and saying this is about as good as you can do for having lost Juan Soto if they also add Bregman.
Yeah, I would love to see them add Bregman. I don't think they're going to. I think this is the team they're going to roll in with. But if they were to add Bregman, yeah, I think it would bump it up to the A- area.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. I mean, I think it's easy. Definitely that third base hole is their weakest spot right now, and I think it's not going to be that platoon that they have set up now is not going to be a good thing to watch from that perspective. So there's definitely a spot there, and maybe they address that midseason too. But
we've got a few teams that have really disappointed us so far this offseason. 3 teams that literally got Fs across the board. We're going to save them for later if there's time. The Padres, the Twins, and the Cardinals. It's been basically do nothing so far overall for all 3 of those clubs. And that could still change. Maybe it's trades instead of free agent signings, different situations for all 3 of those teams. But there's 2 teams that almost got Fs across the board that I wouldn't have expected to see this low when the offseason began. So let's begin with the Mariners. Brent, where has Trader Jerry gone? What is going on with the Mariners? What is happening on that infield? That is a collection of non-big league everyday players, if I've ever seen one. They've JP Crawford and then just like gluing it together at other spots. I mean, Luke Raley as a big side platoon masher at first is fine, but what the heck happened in Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in putting this together. I almost had the exact words that you had on my own notes. Like this is Trader Jerry, right? I mean, this is a team that, of course, has economic limitations. I get that, but they have one of the most aggressive GMs trading wise in the league, and absolutely, and such an obvious strength in their starting pitching and deficiency on the hitting side. And it's just, it's just baffling that there was no move at all. Maybe they got close, whatever, but you still, I don't know, in balancing, in balancing your team, it sure seems like it would have made sense to move one of those starting pitchers for some other impactful hitter. I mean, it's just, part of the D grade is just the expectation with these, with the asset they have in starting pitching that's deep like that, that's young, that's controllable, as well as, this superstar player up the middle, Julio Rodriguez, entering his prime. I mean, it's just, it's almost criminal not to build around that and find some other pieces, actively find some other pieces there. And yes, the infield especially is to go forward with that is not a good look, I think, for 2025.
They've signed one player, Donovan Solano, and they've traded for another, Miles Mastrobuoni. Like, what is this? This just does not make sense. You mentioned the pitching depth, definitely an area of strength they should trade from. We've spent what feels like hours talking about how difficult it is to hit in that park. That's been the case forever. They would be another team that if they didn't have some sort of internal cap preventing them from doing it, Alex Bregman would look really good at third base for the Mariners. Like, that would be a big lift. There is one thing I should throw at you guys for teams that are in this position that are being criticized by us and other folks. Do you care about players acquired at the trade deadline who are not rentals? Because Randy Arozarena came in at the trade deadline and he's still there. Like, that matters, right? I mean, because you gave up something of significance to get a player that wasn't in his walk year. And maybe you got ahead of a market where you couldn't spend the money or you didn't know it was going to be available via trade. Like, should that carry over? Should that count? Should we give them a little bit of credit for trying to bolster the offense back in the summer?
I mean,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. You were just breaking up, so I didn't hear the end of the question. But I mean, I give them some credit, but at the same time, you still have to field a major league team. Like, right? Like, they're playing multiple players on this offense that should not be everyday regulars. It is unreal that Seattle has put themselves in this position, especially when the Astros are clearly taking a step back. Like, the Astros are not as good as they were last year. You have an opportunity to put a hammerlock on this division with that pitching staff. All you got to do is add one or two players to that offense, and hey, this team looks amazing. And they just didn't do it. It's unconscionable.
I'm surprised. I'm looking at the chart over at Fangraphs, the position player WAR chart. The cumulative position player WAR for the Mariners by those projections is 26.5. It's actually not that bad. Orioles, Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, Braves, Astros, Blue Jays, Rangers, Diamondbacks, Cubs. 10 teams ahead of them. Padres, and then they're 12th in position player WAR. I mean, Cal Raleigh, phenomenal behind the plate. You mentioned Julio. Mm-hmm. It's top heavy, and I don't think that's going to work for them because that's a team that has so much swing and miss, in part because of the park, in part because of how it's constructed, where I think their offense will continue to struggle, put runs on the board, and they're going to have to just be extremely healthy across that group of pitchers. This window feels like it could slip away very quickly if a couple of big injuries befall that group. I think that'd be a pretty sad outcome given how much we like what they've assembled on that side. Yeah. How about the Orioles, though? I think they'd be another team where they did add Zach Eflin at the deadline last year. So they lost Corbin Burns. It's a huge loss, of course, this winter. They signed Tyler O'Neill. What are the Orioles thinking right now, trying to supplement that young core that's come together and made them a perennial contender after a deep rebuild?
It's unreal. I mean, there was a report on pitcherlist.com about their GM wanting to prove he's the smartest guy in the room by not signing any major guys or giving out major contracts. It's ridiculous. Like, all you had to do is re-sign Corbin Burns, right? And all of a sudden this pitching staff looks so much better. You have all this young talent that you could trade for pitching if you want to go the trade route and you don't want to add to the payroll as much. Like, how they couldn't get a Garrett Crochet deal done is just terrible. I feel so bad for Orioles fans. I grew up in DC before the Nationals, so I grew up kind of rooting for the Orioles because they were the closest baseball team, and I know how hard it's been for a lot of years for Orioles fans, and I truly feel bad for them. Like, this should be a team that should be doing everything it can to supplement this cheap young prospect talent they've got up at the major leagues or is going to continue to come up to the major leagues, and the organization, even with a new owner, just does not want to spend money.
Yeah, I don't know if it's not getting the right deal or what exactly the problem is, but they have more talent coming up in that position player group too. I mean, Kobe Mayo, Samuel Bisao, Heston Kjerstad's kind of like caught in between right now. He's another one of those guys who are like, what's going to happen if he plays? Well, it might not be in Baltimore. It might just be as part of a trade eventually because they never seem to prioritize him.
Send players for Dylan Cease. Like, if you don't have to commit to him long term, but like you are a 100-win team. Like, you're act like it.
What would the move be, Brent? What would you change first about this roster if you could go out and make that big deal?
I mean, I think you touched on it briefly. I mean, the thing that stands out to me with the Orioles is just the depth of their hitting, young hitters, both at the prospect level and the guys that have just come up. They should be able to. They should have been able. Now maybe they were close. They should be able to put a crochet like deal together for him, like that the Red Sox did, where they have just several top prospects that the teams understandably are hesitant to trade, but the Orioles system is a deep one too, and there are plenty of they've kind of made it this far and got to this point under Elias in drafting and developing hitters specifically. And a couple of years ago, that's a great game plan, because you figure once you get to this point, you got Gunnar as rookie of the year, and you've got Holiday there now, and all these other guys that are established. But like you said, they have Basayo and Mayo and Dylan Beavers and on down the list. You just figure that at some point you kind of package those guys together to get a difference maker. So I'm more down on them for the grade for the offseason here, more in the lack of kind of transactions trading wise, because it just seems like they have a base to do that, to kind of especially upgrade and give them some veteran depth in the rotation. Then I am, all the owners cheap and they won't spend the money. I mean, sure, yes, they very much, could have improved or had a good offseason if they re-signed Corbin Burns, but they also have this, huge cachet of young prospects that that a lot of teams would certainly be interested in. Talking starting pitching coming back to Baltimore.
Yeah, and to Justin's point too, I mean, yeah, the possibility of something like a Dylan Cease trade, knowing the Padres' financial situation right now, they would be looking to move payroll and fill multiple spots in the big league roster. Well, guess who can do that? The Orioles can do that. So it's become, instead of being the Orioles need to go get a pitcher from the Marlins, which is like the running bit on our shows for 3 years, I feel like. Now it's the Orioles got to go make a trade with the Padres. Like, that's a fair way to look at those two teams. It seem like they line up very, very well at this point. There were a few teams in the middle that we had some big disagreements about. Justin threw a D- on the Angels. You're not impressed by the Angels offseason? I mean, it happened early. It happened a long time ago. They were the first mover. They won November. You want to know who won the offseason as of November? The Angels did. They added Yusei Kikuchi, Jorge Soler in a trade with the Braves, Travis d'Arnaud for catching depth, signed Kyle Hendricks for some innings, and brought in Kevin Newman to be a backup infielder. Losses include Patrick Sandoval, who was already hurt, Griffin Canning, Matt Thaiss, and Eric Wagaman. So they didn't really lose a lot of guys that were contributing at the end of the season, and they did go out and make a few moves. But why a D-, Justin?
Okay, so if I hate teams that refuse to spend money, first and foremost, the second thing I dislike is teams not understanding who they are or where they're at. And I think that's the Angels. Like, this is a team that should be tearing things down and just rebuilding. And they kind of refuse to do that, right? Like, they should be trading Mike Trout. They should be trading these guys away. They're not going to compete in this division. They may be the worst team in this division with a generational talent in Mike Trout. They just had 2 generational talents and couldn't figure out how to win. Like, I think this is an organization that needs to turn things around. And so, like, for them to not make those kind of moves, but instead go out and, hey, we're gonna add this. We're gonna, like, I like Kikuchi. I think Kikuchi is a great signing for a competing team, not for the Angels. Like, when you're gonna pair that with a signing of Kyle Hendricks and a signing of Kevin Newman and, like, a Tim Anderson on a minor league deal, like, I just, like, yeah, it's not necessarily that the big signings or the quote unquote big signings that they made were bad. It just doesn't make any sense for this organization. This organization needs to be thinking about, how do we turn this ship around that has wasted the career of Mike Trout, and they're not. They're just continuing to make bad move after bad move to, you know, compound the problems.
If I had to guess, rank the difficulty of working for various ownership groups in Major League Baseball, I think Artie Moreno, for an owner who will spend on payroll, would be one of the most difficult owners to work for. It's a really odd situation. I at least respect that they are trying to get better. I think the Kikuchi deal ends up looking like a good deal based on years and dollars compared to what happened in the rest of free agency. They've got this new philosophy about getting guys to the big leagues really fast. Nolan Shanuel probably shouldn't have made it to the big leagues nearly as fast as he did. They're probably going to do the same thing with Christian Moore to bolster the infield. And the injury to Zach Neto is kind of one of those things that we found out about. Geez, I think it was when we were at first pitch. Hadn't been reported yet that he had the shoulder surgery. That's a huge deal for them. Neto's such an important piece. I look at what they're doing and I think, oh, okay, Tim Anderson's going to make the opening day roster because Neto's probably on the IL. Soler adds some thump, but then keeps them from DHing Trout more, which would be good to keep him healthy, regardless of whether you want to trade him or not. Like, don't you just want to keep him healthy and try to be a wild card? If your goal is to be healthy and to be a wild card team, that's not the best fit on the roster, but it's at least adding power and trying to get better. Joe Adell, interesting quality of contact, maybe took a pretty big step forward last year. People kind of like him. Hoppy behind the plate. Like, you can kind of tell yourself a story that with some good fortune, which I think is all health related. Like if this team is among the league leaders fewest IL days this year, I can see them actually hanging around and being a wild card team. But I don't look at that roster and say, yeah, that's a bunch of A health grades either. So I don't think it's very likely to happen for them. Brent, you were not nearly as harsh on the Angels. They kind of ended up as like a mid pack. I think you had maybe a B- on them. And I was kind of similar with what I thought they'd done because they at least stayed in their lane in a way that gave them a chance to stay afloat in the AL West. But are there depth moves or anything they've done via the trades that they've made that would make them a little sneakier than people would give them credit for?
Yeah. And again, I mean, I think, you know, the task that we have here is kind of grading the offseason. And one way of looking at it is straight transactionally. Like you listed off who they lost, you know, Griffin Canning, Sandoval, I forget, Wagaman.
Tyson Wagaman, yeah.
Tyson Wagaman. And they gained, like, you know, at the very least, a mid-rotation pitcher in Kikuchi, a huge power bat that in Soler. We know, you know, his he can get on a roll and hit tons of home runs. So right there are two, you know, I feel significant additions there outside of whether you think of, you know, whether you think they're on the right track or whether they should be tearing it down, all that sort of thing. I mean, I guess I also, maybe this one also came after, you know, looking at, you know, the Rockies or one of these, a couple of these other teams that didn't do a diddly squat at all, like, you know, and so, and even the things, even the guy like, you know, Travis d'Arnaud, their veteran guy to pair with Ohapi, to give him some days off, to mentor him, all that sort of thing, work with the mostly young staff. It just, you know, it makes sense to me. And I think for this off season, that's why I kind of, you know, try not to go crazy, but B- I thought was, you know, was kind of a sneaky good off season.
Fear not, though. It still averages out to about a C across the board. So this panel does not love the Angels.
Probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, we probably balanced that out correctly with the three of us all chiming in on that one. How about the A's? Brent, you gave the A's a B for their offseason so far. What happened there? Did you put the grade in the wrong column, or do you actually like what they're doing right now?
Well, so here's my thing, and I think it's similar to the Angels. So, you know, I'm on the same kind of thing. Getting Severino and Springs, you know, two veteran guys to go with what seems like, you know, a big collection of younger, kind of unproven pitchers for that staff is really important, kind of the stabilizing thing. And while it's not a traditional kind of transaction, I just think that the Brent Rooker extension is just a huge deal for their offseason. Taking, you know, kind of this breakout player, obviously, you know, comfortable with the fans and kind of ability to connect that way. and just locking him up and saying, this is a player that wants to be here, that we're going to take care of for this amount of time, especially given all the other uncertainty of what's going on with that athletics organization. I just think it's a great move, even though it's not a traditional kind of trade or total free agent signing. And then also Gio Urshela, it's not a world beater, but again, it sort of fills a need. And there's a guy that why didn't the Yankees just sign him? I mean, as someone just as not a superstar, but a proven guy to kind of take over it and upgrade current position that they have. So, and again, I just think I'm obviously grading positively those teams that are kind of active and doing things.
I threw a D+ at the A's because I feel like motivation, intent matters here, and this is about avoiding a grievance with the Players Association.
Yeah,
right? This isn't about getting better for the sake of getting better, and this would be maybe the worst situation to be in as a front office right now. A very loyal group that's been there a long time, that historically did really well in trades. I feel like in more recent years has not brought as much back value-wise, trading away foundational pieces. They've had a lot of misses, like net negative trades in long-term WAR, which is really hard to do when you're trading for quantity. You're giving up one really good player, taking 3 or 4 back. But despite all that, they have had some successes. To see what Lawrence Butler was doing last year, even Shea Langoliers, I think, has one more gear. Jacob Wilson's interesting, even though he's a different kind of player with that contact-heavy approach. Like, you can start to tell yourself a story that this is at least a league average lineup. Maybe by the end of this season, you take him out of the Oakland Coliseum, you put him in the AAA park in Sacramento. That's going to change things a bit. And I just wonder, like, how is that ballpark going to play with major league players in it? And compared to Citi Field, where Severino just spent last season and was good but not elite. Jeffrey Springs has pitched in the Trop a lot. They boosted Ks and is a great place to pitch. How do those guys look pitching half of their games in Sacramento? That's a huge mystery for me as we kind of try to forecast this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see that too. I think Springs is going to be fine because I just think Springs is a really, really good pitcher. I do worry a little bit about Severino in that new park, and I honestly have no idea how it's going to play. And I've been there before, since it's only about an hour and a half away from where I live. So I'm hoping to go maybe catch a couple games there in Sacramento this year. But I personally I want to love what the A's have done this offseason because their organization has not spent any money for the last. I mean, they actively have tanked this team over the course of the last few years, so they could move to Las Vegas. And so to see them actually go out and spend some money, I want to give them some credit, but I think as DVR mentioned, this is very much kind of Brewster's Millions. He's just trying to get rid of the money so he doesn't get in trouble at the end. And so I can't give him complete credit, especially because while I like Luis Severino as a real life pitcher, as a guy they could have brought in, and I like Jose Leclerc as a real life reliever, they could have spread that money around and made this team overall better. And so that's why I kind of landed in the mid-range of a C, where I felt like the way they allocated the money wasn't great. I'm glad that they finally allocated some money to free agents and to players as opposed to just hoarding it. But personally, I would have liked to see them maybe spread it around a little bit. $10 million for Jose Leclerc seems insane for this team. That just, I mean, I know it's a 1-year deal. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. And I said that earlier in the show. But you could have spent you could have gotten 2 players for $5 million that probably would have had a greater impact than just a $10 million Jose Leclerc. So I don't know what the A's are doing. I don't think they know what they're doing. I think they're just biding their time until they get to Vegas.
I do think that situation, though, is one where it was going to be really hard to attract free agents. And if you are trying to avoid that grievance, you're doing everything possible to find people that'll take your money. But it's a shorter list of options than most other clubs
That's probably true.
actually have. So a D+, and I think the Rooker extension is a big thing that kept that from being like a D- or an F for me. I just can't stand what this franchise has become because of John Fisher. One more team we're going to get to. Justin, you do seem a little more comfortable with what the Pirates are doing in their position player group. I think they have had an F offseason. You gave them a C. How much do you like Spencer Horwitz? Is that the story? Is that how you unlock the C grade for the Pirates?
I probably just like the Pirates in general more than I probably should. And in the same way that I kind of like gave credit to the A's, we're like, hey, at least they spent some money. I probably should be downgrading the Pirates for still not spending any money. But I do like Spencer Horwitz. I thought that was a nice little pickup for them. They've made some additions to the bullpen, which I think might, help strengthen that. But again, this is an organization. Yeah, it probably shouldn't have given a C. No, I should have given them like a D or an F. This is an organization, again, like they've got a lot of young talent that's not very expensive for them. And they should be supplementing. Like the whole argument on getting PNC built was, listen, you buy us this, build us this pretty stadium. It is the nicest stadium in all of baseball. And we're going to reward you with putting a really good quality product on the field. And they've developed really well, but they have refused to then go supplement that development with major league free agents or big time trades in order to make this team a powerhouse. And again, this is another one of these central teams where I go, hey, like if Pittsburgh went out and bought 2 marquee free agents this offseason, aren't we considering Pittsburgh one of the teams to beat in the NL Central? If they go out and they get Corbin Burns and they go get a Willie Adames, like, aren't they like the front runners or one of the front runners in the NL Central? So yeah, no, I shouldn't have given them a C. I definitely should have given them a D or an F.
They definitely should have been a team interested in Willie Adames. I have no idea if they were even close. Michael Conforto, instead of going to the Dodgers, would have been a good fit here. Give him a second year, bolster the corner there. Do anything. I no matter how much any of us like Spencer Horwitz, this is embarrassing. If you have Paul Skeens and Jared Jones as your 1-2, and you're at
and Bubba Chandler coming,
the ability to develop pitching there is real. If you can't supplement that with quality bats, you can't trade, whatever it is you have to do, it's a complete failure. I hope for the sake of Ben Cherington and the front office there that they can find some fits. It'd be fun to see what they could do supplementing that group. This has been one of the most frustrating off seasons ever. And Pirates fans are used to this, but I don't know how you could take the optimism you just had with those 2 pitchers from last year and then just do nothing with that momentum all winter long. That's a killer.
Yeah, I side a little bit on your side there, DVR. Well, I guess Justin's getting there too.
I joined.
We moved him. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think what strikes me about that team when I look at the lineup and the roster there is there's a bunch of, especially in the middle, in the infield, like there's if 1 or 2 of those guys, York or Gonzalez or someone kind of steps up, or if somehow Hayes' back is better, it could really take a step up. There'd be some stuff, some good things going on there. But it's almost like just continuing to grab those sorts of almost fringe-ish guys, and then it seems to me sometimes they don't give them a full chance to kind of develop there. Kind of gets you on the hamster wheel a little bit, and I fear that that's the same thing with Horwitz. I think he's better than some of those guys I mentioned, but it's still it'd be great to have another big name or 2 on the hitting side for sure, to kind of give them some some run production for those young pitchers on the mound.
Spencer Horwitz is the 3rd best hitter by projection right now for the Pirates. O'Neill Cruz, Brian Reynolds, Spencer Horwitz. That's by WRC Plus from the Oopsie projection set. So I just don't know what you're doing, Pirates. I mentioned those teams that really did nothing so far. Padres, Twins, Cardinals. Who salvages it? Who gets out of the F tier by stringing together a trade or 2 between now and opening day? Do you have a favorite from that group, Justin?
I mean, none of them salvage it from an addition standpoint, but I think the Cardinals salvage it from an offseason. At least they're making long-term improvements. I think the Cardinals will trade away pieces from this roster, like Arenado, like Ryan Helsley, that will strengthen that those prospects, that farm system, and make this team better for the long run. I think the Twins and the Padres are just being cheap. And it's really unfortunate. Like, we kind of expected from the Twins. I know that the financial issues in San Diego are contributing to this, but we just don't expect it to come from the organization, or an organization like the Padres, who have been so active. So it's just kind of a bummer that both, these are two of these three teams. Oh, actually, I guess the Twins didn't make the playoffs last year. All these teams were contenders last year. Maybe they didn't all make the playoffs. And to see them not make any moves to add to these teams is just disappointing.
Yeah, the Twins were polite enough to fall apart, to leave the door open for both the Tigers and the Royals, which I didn't see coming.
Yeah, I would agree. St. Louis has the best chance of doing a little something, and it's sort of that addition by subtraction. I think, especially if somehow they're able to move Arenado out, they can fully, as they've sort of stated they want to, kind of give some of these younger guys some more time. And I think by moving Arenado there, who's not going to be a part of their next really good team, they can get longer looks at guys like Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman and Donovan. How a lot of these guys and others can move around there. Weather Holt comes up at some point in the next in the next year or two, all that. So yeah, I think that's a possibility there.